The fascinating thing about the undead is their ability to endure and persist no matter the circumstances of the world around them. Try as we might, there is almost no way to fully rid the world of their threat. It cannot be extinguished and stopped, but it can be tempered. Like weeds in the garden, an effort must be made to quell them when they show up, lest the garden be completely overgrown and unrecoverable. The ghoul is the best example of this, for they are a lower form of undead, but one where their power starts to become clear. See, unlike the animated corpses I've talked about before, ghouls can occur naturally, and can infect others. When ghouls arrive at a place, they need to be rooted out, lest it becomes corrupted. Though its threat is not clear or world-ending, it needs to be handled, lest the world slowly fall, one hamlet at a time. Luckily, most places take this threat quite seriously, and some kingdoms even send whole armies to deal with a blight of ghouls. The issue comes during times of war, or when forces are stretched thin, when relying upon adventurers becomes the only option. It also doesn't help that masses of bodies or the sites of battlefields tend to attract more ghouls, meaning if a war is happening and there is some form of infestation nearby, the war will amplify it massively. But there are many myths and legends about how ghouls are created. Some cultures think that cannibals will rise again like one upon their death. Others think that those who live a life of pure debauchery will become a ghoul. Those are both wrong, but there is some truth to them. See, what causes a ghoul to rise up from a corpse is that corpse being powered by, or maybe overflown by, negative energy. Also just known as natural necromantic magic, as yes, necromancy is natural to our world. Explaining in detail what exactly this force is would just take forever, so just know for now it is a naturally occurring form of necromancy that we really can't do anything about. But all sorts of actions can build up this negative energy, and they are mostly evil ones. Those who partake in things like cannibalism and other degenerate acts will generate this energy. And if enough of it is stored within a person when they die, they might raise again as a ghoul a little bit after. So these cultures are correct to shun these acts, since they can build up into a ghoul over time. It's not a guarantee, in fact it's quite unlikely, but it is a possibility, one that you should be worried about. But there is also the more common way of becoming a ghoul, and that is via infection. See, animated corpses don't really turn people, with a few exceptions. It is almost always a spellcaster who gets them to kill you, and then turns your corpse after the battle. Ghouls do not do this. If you are scratched or bitten by a ghoul, rushing to some form of healer would be a wise option, for you are most likely infected with what is simply called ghoulish fever. Don't let this simple name fool you. This disease will slowly sap at your strength and power until you can hardly move. Then you can hardly think, then you can hardly do anything until you die, slowly and painfully. Luckily, this is actually quite easy to cure, not just magically, but plenty of normal herbs and natural remedies can treat it. Sometimes, if it's only a light infection, a good night's rest can actually rid you of it. But those who do die of this disease will rise again as another ghoul. This is not their intention, by the way. Most ghouls have no desire or want to infect others, they just hunger for flesh and seek to eat you. This is actually the main reason they flock to battlegrounds, because they just want to eat the corpses undisturbed. If they actually get what they wanted, they would rarely turn anyone and just eat them. The reason this is an issue is actually because of how weak the ghouls are, for they are swarming creatures that prefer to overwhelm their foes to devour them. This leads to many of them dying in the process, meaning a lot more people are going to survive, maybe kill them, or possibly run away. Regardless, they are probably scratched or bitten afterwards, and you know what that means. Ghouls are also not mindless animals. There is some degree of intelligence to them, although it is very limited. not like that of a man, more so that of a dog. They can figure out things and bypass many simple things like puzzles. They are also smart enough to flee when they are losing and use guerrilla tactics, but not flawlessly. They are going to be using the simplest form of this, like an ambush, but nothing more complicated than throwing a rock at most. They will very rarely leave something once they are trapped in it, however. See, they are driven by this unnatural hunger, but they also do not die of natural causes. Indeed, they do not need to eat in any way. Feeding just satiates a horrid pain within them. But very soon after, perhaps seconds alone, they will hunger again. If left in a crypt or a tomb, they will long to feast on the flesh of others, but will never decay or die. In fact, quite the opposite might happen. They might become more powerful. See, so far I have been talking about a weaker ghoul, or newly formed one, but ghouls actually become more powerful the more negative energy that's within them. And naturally, over the course of them just existing, they will store up more negative energy, eventually leading them to have a metamorphosis, becoming what we call a ghast. This is in many regards just a more powerful and intelligent ghoul. In fact, this intelligence is probably what sets them apart the most, while they also become so poisonous that an aura of poison might surround them, but it really is the intelligence that sets them apart. See, they regain a little bit of the personality they had in life. It is not really that person come back unless you view it as a sort of twisted in some way. They are capable of speech again, but they will most likely only use it to save themselves or command others. See, they are pretty smart at this point, not only enough to intentionally create ghouls, but to command them as well, and ghouls tend to follow the orders of the ghast that create them, and I suspect that there is some magical control here at play, since they can command them despite being way out of earshot. Sometimes a ghoulish invasion is actually being led by a ghast, or even several of them. This is the real reason kingdoms go out of their way to stop them, because this is when they become a real threat. They must prevent this from happening in the first place. I should also note that if a ghoul turns by the first method I described, that of the natural negative energy forming within them, if enough goes into them at one moment, or the person was particularly awful and had this amount of energy in them when they died, they might just skip the ghoul stage and become a ghast instantly. More of their original personality will remain when this happens, and this might just be the same person again, with an unnatural hunger that drives them insane within them, and the ability to turn others into their undead minions. This is probably one of the easiest ways to become a form of intelligent undead out there. It is also probably one of the worst ones. You are almost certainly better off being a lich or a vampire, but this in comparison to those has so little requirements that most people might see it as worth it. However, most, in fact close to none, ever pick to become this type of ghast, since there are so many risks involved and the awful unnatural hunger. This is just something that sort of happens naturally to particularly awful or unlucky people. I should also note that it is possible to create a ghast by just flowing negative energy into a ghoul. Casting any spell that uses this force would do the trick, but the best way to guarantee it is to use the spell Negative Energy Flood, believe it or not. You would overpower and give them more than enough of this energy to make them change. Sometimes you might even gain control over them by doing so, but this is very risky and very unreliable. More times than not, you've just made them more powerful, and they're still going to try and eat you, so it's not worth the risk at all unless you are particularly evil. I also want to note that, as far as my knowledge, only humanoids can become ghouls. This curse upon them is exclusive to this creature type, and while the negative energy can be used to change them, sometimes they can be as large as ogres, they're not going to change more than this shape. Even if a necromancer tries to do some advanced tactics to mold them, they're still going to be recognizably a humanoid. However, when ghasts create ghouls, those ghouls can become a ghast as well, and they will usually still be under the control of the first one. This allows them to make more powerful and intelligent minions. There are even some examples of ghoulish kingdoms being formed, where there is a Ghast king and their loyal Ghast knights or loyal Ghast spellcasters, and under their command is legions of ghoul minions below them. They would be the weakest form of an undead Dark Lord, but still quite formidable. Now, they would actually be capable of betraying each other at this point, but I suspect it would be very hard for them to do so due to the magical compulsion for them to follow. Of course, the hunger would still be an issue for them, and at this size, it would become their biggest problem. They would often have to conduct raids to find meat to feast upon. The larger their force, the bigger this becomes a threat, which does imply that over time they might wipe themselves out due to their own hunger. I have actually had to deal with one of these Ghast kings, or rather queen in this case, by the name of Lectia. See, one necromancer learned of an ancient crypt which housed the long-dead remains of a fallen kingdom, one that fell due to decadence, and I believe due to the corruption of a demon, one in which I'm actually acquainted with, but that's a story for another day. A dragon dwelled in the ruins of the long-destroyed place, till the necromancer added it to their undead horde, and found the crypt beneath this ruined city. They found the body of their last queen, and hoped to turn her into some form of powerful minion. Fate, however, has funny plans, for as soon as he began to cast his dark spell, she awoke due to the energy buildup of all those years, and slashed at his throat, killing him in moments. She was aghast, and just turned a very powerful necromancer into the first bound to her will. She used his strength to raise her people again, and wished to conquer the world, beginning her reign of terror all over. This was just a stone's throw away from my home, and so my family called for the aid of all that we could, including myself. In the end, we returned the dead to their tombs, but I only managed to do so because of my knowledge of necromancy. I used various spells to temporarily gain control over a large portion of their army and send them to fight their own. This act alone won us the day, and sent me to jail for acts of necromancy, because it is illegal in my homeland, something I forgot about. Of course, the wealth of my family means that I was not in there for long, and I was bailed out pretty quickly, although I do believe they did that more so to save face than to save me. Still though, I was very surprised at the moment I was dubbed the hero of the hour, only to have chains flung around me for the next moment. Still though, my homeland persists, and at the end of the day, that is all that truly mattered. Thank you for listening to my tales. I am the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.